Hello, everybody, and welcome to this transport decision meeting at Portsmouth City Council. I'm Gerald Fennell-Jackson, I'm Cabinet Member for Transport, and I am chairing this meeting, so welcome everybody. Just a quick bit of housekeeping about fire alarms. We're not expecting one, so if one goes, it's real, and we meet at Queen Victoria. And don't use the lifts, and if you signed in, please sign out on the way so they don't come and search for you. And there's microphones for everybody, and this meeting is being streamed, so those people speaking will be on camera, as long as the cameras are correctly apportioned anyway. So let's quickly run through introductions. Simon?
Good morning, Gerald. Councillor Simon Bosher, Conservative spokesman for Traffic and Transportation.
Thanks. Graham?
Councillor Graham Heaney, I'm the Labour spokesman for Transport.
Great.
Aneta Skurtu, Project Manager.
Excellent. So,
Alison Harper, Democratic Services.
Trish Bell, Portsmouth South Sea Tree Warden Coordinator and Executive of the Charles Dickens Community Orchards.
lovely. Thank you.
John Worley, I'm a tree warden also.
John, but you have jumped over a young man sat beside you who has failed to introduce himself.
Yes. Oh, sorry, I thought somebody else was talking. Hello, Mr. Dennis David, tree warden.
Thank you.
Portsmouth citizen.
Martin?
Martin Laver, Assistant Director for Infrastructure.
Felicity Tibbury, Assistant Director for Transport.
Kevin McKee, Parking Manager, Portsmouth City Council.
Lovely.
Simon Bell, Principal Public Transport Officer.
Thank you. Thank you. Ian?
Ian Saunders, representing Portsmouth Cycle Forum.
Okay, thank you very much. We have an apology from Brian Madgwick, who is not well, who is the independent spokesperson on transport. Okay, now can I ask, is there anybody who's just here for the South Western Railway's ticket office proposal and Southern Railway's timetable consultations? Yes. It does seem a bit much to ask you to sit through the 14 hours that we're going to take on Lake Road. So, colleagues, if you don't mind, to release this young man to go and do other things, should we quickly do this one first? Is that all right? Excellent. Okay, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. I mean, this paper is just for information, and it's concerning two proposals. One is the changing of ticket office hours on South West Railway stations. I mean, that's a national consultation, and the other one is concerning Southern Railway and their Coastway West timetable, which is the Brighton to Portsmouth and Southampton routes. So the first element is just how the railways are proposing to change they're calling it the retail offer, but in reality they're proposing to change how tickets are sold. So in many cases they won't be. The number of people using ticket offices is declining, and that comes at a cost to it. So the proposal is to make it more flexible in terms of staff that are at the station that can be on the barriers and can assist people with the ticket vending machines and whatever else. And the council has made a submission to this to South West Railways on this about the proposal, and I mean it just lists here, there's details here of each station and how the changes are in that the hours that are currently listed in 5.1 for stations in Portsmouth, and then in 6.2 they list what the proposal would be. So if you look at in particularly 6.2, you've got like Portsmouth, there will be member of staff on duty at all times in the ticket area, they say. And again at Portsmouth and the South Sea. Fratton, it would be between 5 o'clock in the morning and 2300 hours. And Cosham, they would reduce the hours at Cosham, and it would become an unstaffed station on Sunday. And that becomes an issue because I think as a result the toilets will be locked because they are within the ticket hall. So, and the council has made a submission to South West Railways on this proposal with our concerns and objections. So,
should we do that one first,
yes,
and come to Southern second? thanks very much indeed for this. I think it's, from my point of view, I think it's very clear that this is a very retrograde step from the train company. As I understand it, it's going to mean that if people pay with cash, they won't be able to. It'll be card only. And we know that in the city there are large numbers of people who don't have bank accounts and therefore by nature can't have cash cards. So, because we know how many people come to the civic offices and pay their rent in cash every fortnight. And I think there's also a considerable concern that some fares are only available online, and that that there are people who we would want to tempt onto the railway who will now feel frightened about doing that and therefore less likely to take a train. Train traffic's down 30% since the pandemic, and this seems to me to be a way of making sure that not everybody feels welcome on the train, and therefore it's right that the City Council should write to object about this. Simon, Graham, any? Microphone, please,
Sorry,
Graham.
a couple of questions, if I may. On 6.1 on the table where it talks about station category and it talks about Portsmouth South, it says full retailing capability with expertise available to what retail choices until full transition to digital retail. So am I right in understanding that the plan is that no personal service will be available at Portsmouth South? You'll have to buy tickets digitally, and you can't be able to buy tickets, you know, off other ways. That's what it appears to imply.
Councillor, that's not how I understood it. Under their I mean, although that may be how they've worded it, I understood there would be a member of staff on. If you look at the table, it says at Portsmouth and Southsea there will be a member of staff from midnight to 23:59. So there will be someone in the ticket hall 24 hours a day, they're saying, which is interesting because there aren't trains between the hours of midnight and 4 in the morning for a period. But I mean, there are obviously staff also on the platforms for dispatch purposes, to dispatch trains, particularly on the higher level platforms. But yes, but they've indicated there will be a member of staff available. But I suspect longer term, one could see this may lead to that way of going, because in addition to the use of ticket machines is also going down, surprisingly, as people use more apps.
I mean, I think that's what it says, until full transition is available. So there is a further plan to remove all abilities to buy tickets except presumably online.
So Graham, where I think they're going is that, as you know, there are people who are by the barriers and they're going to retain those but expect them to sell tickets as well as open the barriers, and that all the people in the ticket offices will lose their jobs.
I mean, the practical, I mean, I've been using trains recently because I've been going to the proms in London, and one of the interesting things about the ticket vending machines is where they are placed at Fratton, where I tend to buy my tickets, is if you're looking at the screen, there's a reflection from a light sunny day, and it actually makes it quite difficult. If you're slightly visually impaired and if you can't see the screen properly. So actually there are practical difficulties in the way that I spoke to a member of staff about the machines. She said they are planning to upgrade them, because the other thing is they have in the past given me the wrong ticket. I have put in what I think is the correct journey, and it's given me a ticket for a slightly different route, which if I was told, I would have been told off. So these machines are not entirely reliable even when you think you've done the right thing. So the other astonishing thing that I saw from this report was paragraph 5 of it. Apparently South West Railway don't know how people buy their tickets at the stations, which is incredible, really. You would have thought that that would have been a piece of information they would know, because that should inform what they're doing. If they don't even know how people buy it, how can they possibly ask for changes? So it does seem to be a retrograde step. And also, given that the government are encouraging rail companies to provide a more logical and rational system of ticketing, until we sorted that out, it seems to me you shouldn't be making changes to the way tickets are sold. So, yeah, I support all the comments in here.
No, although I think I should declare an interest, but it's non-prejudicial, the fact that I do regularly use the train to London. And
You own the train company?
Well, I was going to say I wish, but the way the train companies are at this moment, it's probably not a good place to be, but it is what it is. I've not essentially got any major comments to make on this report. It's for information, Gerald, and clearly it's coming from you rather than the council as such. I did have one somewhat light-hearted comment to make. I'm just trying to work out who exactly has managed to get from London to Gatwick in a car in 88 minutes.
I'm coming up that we're just doing Southern, we're doing ticket offices first. I'm going to come to Southern in a moment.
It's okay, I'll come back on that one.
Okay,
then.
we'll come back for a reprise on that. Okay, all right, thanks. That's ticket offices done. Southern.
Right, yes, so yeah, with regards to Southern, this is a consultation that Southern have put out, and it's a 12-week consultation in terms of they wish to recast the timetable and how it operates. And Southern is not, I mean, there have been a lot of reliability issues with Southern, but it's fair to say that they did come to us and gave us a lot of information about the percentage of trains that were turned short because they're running late and then they can't run back, so they turn short. So they don't get into Portsmouth, they turn just to Fratton, which might suit Councillor Healy, but not others. And then also they turn short of Fareham before getting to Southampton. So so the proposal is to reconfigure the timetable completely and make it regular clock face. So the service that goes through Cosham, Southampton, Cosham, Chichester, Chichester would be every 30 minutes rather than every 15/45 minutes at the moment. So it's not evenly spaced at all. So it's not, so if you just miss one, depending where it is, you could have a long way. And the same applies with Portsmouth to the ones to Portsmouth are not evenly spaced. So they're proposing to do this. To make it, and what would also be that all the trains from Cosham would go to Brighton or Southampton, and all the trains from Portsmouth would go to Gatwick and Victoria. So that does mean that there is a change. So there are some negatives in this in terms of people will be required to change either Chichester or Barnham. It will be same platform interchange, but they will be required to change with the time penalty for that. And it will also mean that some of the services are slower. Because, for instance, the service from Portsmouth that goes to Gatwick and Victoria will pick up the smaller stations, not all of them, it will alternate the smaller stations between Chichester and Havant. So these Warblington, Southbourne, Nutbourne, Bosham, Fishbourne. So those ones will be covered by those, which gives those places a direct service. It doesn't affect Portsmouth, but it gives them a direct service to London. They say, I mean, there's a lot of new housing gone in on the whole of that corridor, quite near railway stations. At the moment, the shuttle only runs between Littlehampton and Portsmouth. So if you want to go to London, you have to change already. So there are some issues, and we've raised some concerns about particularly the increase in journey times, which is obviously a concern that you're adding up to 10 minutes or so. But I think, I mean, the plus point is that at the moment you get an hour back. Now, with this purpose, with the proposal, you would get an hour back, although they may have to change. So it gives you some flexibility in addition to that.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Simon, your breakneck speed route to Gatwick.
Yeah, I was just questioning 11.3 to a certain degree. I don't disagree with what Simon's saying in that respect, but somebody's Google mapped the car to demonstrate some statistics there. I would argue that 88 minutes doesn't factor in. I've just actually looked at it on my map, and actually it's currently 100 minutes, so it's exactly the same as there. In fact, 97 minutes I've looked at it if I wanted to leave here now and drive by car to Gatwick. That obviously doesn't factor in everything like parking and getting into the terminal, whereas when I have to go abroad, I regularly use the train to go to Gatwick because it goes straight into the South Terminal, and then you've got the little link if you want to use the monorail. So I think that 88 minutes is a little bit disingenuous, if I'm totally honest, and being used as a statistic to demonstrate a point. But I get where you're coming from, the wider issue, and I would argue that 11.3 is a little bit erroneous in this particular instance.
Okay, Graham?
Yeah, I've had a quick look at the consultation when it came out, and I'll be making my own responses because I do use that service to Chichester and sometimes to Brighton as well. One of the interesting things I discovered earlier in the year, this is now some months ago, so I'm not quite sure how up to date it is, but I was talking to somebody at Havant because I'd gone to Chichester, but the trains got delayed and there was a problem because the Chichester got cancelled. And I was chatting to one of the staff at Havant who was trying to sort of let people know what was going on and organising everything else, and they said, oh, the problem with Southern is that since COVID, they haven't recruited enough drivers, so they're making their staff work rest days, and some of them don't want to do it, and people calling in sick, so they really don't have enough staff, particularly drivers, to cover their service, so this is why their services keep getting cancelled. So it seems interesting that this is the story we're being told by people who actually work on the system, yet they're trying to present this as it's a reliability issue, but they actually do have an issue around the way they run their services, and they're probably not got enough staff to run the services they do run, which is something they really ought to address.
Okay, I think for me the worry is that the proposals from Southern mean that the journeys from Portsmouth to Southampton are longer, the Portsmouth to Gatwick train time is longer, the Portsmouth to London train time is longer, and actually we're trying to increase the number of people who use public transport as a viable alternative to the car, and making journeys longer. And I don't know when they were last did to take this long, probably Victorian times, is not a sensible way of moving. So I accept what Southern Railway say about their reliability, but if Graham is right, then this is an issue about them recruiting and training enough drivers, and that needs to happen. I think people in Portsmouth are going to get a worse service, and therefore we need to be saying to Southern Railway we don't support what they're doing in terms of offering a worse service. Okay, but thank you very much indeed for those. I just think it's important to get this on the record to make sure that we know what the response is to both these consultations. Okay, it's just for information, but I think it's worth highlighting this. So thanks very much indeed for that. At which point, let's move to Lake Road. And we've got deputations from Ian Saunders from Cycle Forum, John Worley from the Tree Wardens, Trish Bell also from Tree Wardens, and Martin's going to read one out from the Southern Hampshire Bus Operators Association. But let's first have presentation from the asset to walk us through the proposal.
Thank you. So a purpose of this report is to consider representations received during the TRO 39 consultation for the proposed waiting restrictions and bus lane on Lake Road in Portsmouth. Lake Road is a key corridor linking many local bus services from central area of Portsmouth to the city centre. The scheme extent incorporates Lake Road, this section, between Cornmill Roundabout on the west and Lake Road Roundabout on the eastern side. Currently, the traffic movement between Lake Road east and west is often held up at the approach to the roundabout because of dominant movement between the northern and southern flows, which often result in delay to the buses. The roundabout junction is known to have a high rate of cycling casualties. There is an issue with pedestrian severance, while some controlled crossings are present, and those are on Holbrook Approach and Lake Road West. There are no facilities on the northern approach, as well as eastern approach, despite being very popular crossing locations for pedestrians in the area. The Transforming Cities Fund is funding the South East Hampshire Rapid Transit Scheme, which seeks to improve public transport provisions and journey times across the Solent region. The South East Hampshire scheme focuses on enhancing public transport services through new and improved bus priority routes, making traveling by bus more attractive option for everyone. One of the 9 South East Hampshire schemes identified in Portsmouth is Lake Road, and this scheme aims to create a new bus link westbound area, as shown in here, for buses, taxis and cyclists along the Lake Road to avoid buses getting caught in the traffic and adding in the congestion within the city centre area, but also to provide more reliable and faster service for people travelling to the centre of Portsmouth. The other improvements are also proposed within the roundabout, and this aim to create a safer and more direct cycling and walking provisions for cyclists and pedestrians. The improvements proposed include, on the northern approach, a tiger crossing, which is a combination of pedestrian, zebra, and a section for cyclists to give people priority on that approach, as well as the new tiger crossing on the eastern arm. Further improvements include addition of cycling phase to the existing crossing on Holbrook Road, as well as addition of signalized section for cyclists on the Lake Road West. Moreover, other improvements will include addition of and formalization of pedestrian footways through green spaces on that eastern approach to Lake Road roundabout, as well as on the western side. Traffic calming measures on Alexandra Road, including a raised table and priority, enhancing priority for people to cross, as well as the new zebra crossing on Cornmill Road approach. Other improvements in the area include installation of segregated cycling tracks on northern and southern side of Lake Road. Moreover, improvements to the landscaping and footpaths are proposed to make this area more cleaner, greener, and pleasant for everyone to enjoy. To achieve those proposals, a consultation and notification under the Traffic Regulation Order 39 took place between 12th of June and 3rd of July 2023. The aim of the TRO is to include no waiting at any time restrictions in place of pay and display parking spaces for approximately 16 vehicles, shown on Lake Road and highlighted in red, as well as in place of spaces for 2 vehicles on the exit from Cornmill roundabout next to the Salvation Army. Moreover, to introduce a bus lane for buses, taxis, and cyclists on Lake Road westbound, as shown on the previous slide. 28 representations were received, with 27 objections to the removal of parking for the reasons summarized in this table. Some of those reasons include elderly people being unsure about the accessibility, loading issues, picking up and dropping off services, as well as issues of finding parking in the area have been raised through the process. Moreover, one objection came from the private hire vehicles not being able to use the proposed bus lane facility. Furthermore, one representation of support was submitted for this TRO proposal. Through the scheme development and following the traffic modeling exercise, it is imperative that the carriageway parking along Lake Road is removed to allow for installation of the proposed bus lane and cycling-related improvements to balance traffic and public transport needs, but also to achieve the transforming city funding objectives. Various studies and parking surveys were undertaken by the project team to understand the demand on the existing parking base along Lake Road and to identify alternative parking provisions for both residents, visitors, and shoppers alike in this area. Some of those reasons are listed on this slide, and they include there are a variety of parking provisions available within 5-6 minutes walking distance, as well as some of those are within 2 minutes walking distance. In total, we are having around 2,000 parking spaces available within 500-meter radii from Lake Road. Residential area includes also 1 hour free parking to allow people to park in proximity to Lake Road. Moreover, parents and cars can also park on and can pick up and drop off children on the double yellow lines. Moreover, those proposals which are put forward for Lake Road aim to create safer and more direct facilities for people to walk and cycle. Moreover, with the lighting improvements and landscaping and footpaths in the area, Lake Road will be much greener and more pleasant place to walk. The blue badge holders may also park off-free for an ultimate time in all streets, pay and display areas, and that also includes the remaining 8 parking space of Spicer of Cornmill roundabout prior to Spicer Road junctions, as shown on this section. The blue badge holders also can use the residential parking scheme in the city. Another element is that the suggested mitigation measure is that, subject to new TRO and consultation, 2 of the out of 8 parking spaces which are going to be retained on Lake Road and converted to blue badge holders parking going forward. Another objection raised was around private hire vehicle use of bus lanes. PCC had launched a trial in November to allow licensed PHVs to use 5 bus lanes in Portsmouth. An informal report was presented to the cabinet member for transport this year. This report summarizes some of the data collected. Moreover, the trial period has been extended to collect more data, and that data will be presented for a decision in due course. One statement of support for the proposal was submitted. However, a preference was expressed that the cycle facilities should extend beyond up to Spicer Street. This opportunity is going to be explored further with the future developments proposed within the area. The proposed improvements will also have impact on the trees identified on this plan. And starting from the left, tree number 1 and number 2 will be retained. However, it's a subject to an assessment during excavation works to enable for carriageway widening work, which is essential to accommodate for the bus lane as well as the start of the cycling facilities. Tree number 3 within the next to the northwest house will also be retained, however is subject to an agreement with the residents of that property to divert the proposed footway closer to the building within the communal garden space, and the diversion route would bypass the tree to enable us to do so. Tree number 4, 5, and 6 were identified as for removal to allow for the new carriageway construction and installation of the proposed walking and cycling facilities in the area. This scheme is also incorporating significant landscaping improvements along the entire length of Lake Road. This includes tree planting scheme on the image showed on the top. This is the area in proximity of the proposed tree number 1 and 2, which might be impacted by the works going forward. The aim is to add low ground shrubs, spring bulbs, as well as additional trees to reinstate the area and rehabilitate the ecosystem following completion of the scheme. Moreover, the scheme is addressing issues of lack of sitting or stopping spaces with people who are having issues with accessibility, and that will be accommodated for addition of benches. The slide below shows the area within the communal garden of Northwest House, where the land take is essential to enable for widening of the carriageway to maintain two-way traffic flow and also to allow for the bus lane, cycling and walking facilities installation. Within that proposal, there is an idea of creating a new recreational space for the residents with addition of new trees, shrubs, and spring summer bulbs, as well as all of the raised beds, stone raised beds will be reconstructed, incorporating new seating spaces, as shown in here, as well as the existing brambles will be replaced with high quality vegetation going forward. Another areas of landscaping are next to the tree number 4, 5, and 6 showed on the previous plan, and this is the area where a new garden space will be created for people to sit down with shrubs, summer bulbs, etc., and additional trees are going to be planted in the area. At the Holbrook Road approach, existing treaded paths are going to be formalized with the no-dig construction to retain existing trees in the area, but also to create a new path for people to be able to walk. Moreover, some new seating areas will be creating, additional trees will be planted as well as spring bulbs. And on the other side, between Holbrook Road and Lake Road approach, a treaded path will also be formalized with no-dig construction to retain existing trees, but also to enhance the greenery within that space. Just to summarize, that this scheme aims to replant around 60 trees across Lake Road, which is part of the scheme, but additional trees will also be planted on Lake Road East within the green space before the Fratton Road Junction approach. In conclusion, it is recommended that the Cabinet Member for Transport approves the Lake Road scheme and the implementation of the TRO 39 to introduce waiting restrictions and bus lane on Lake Road. This proposal is addressing the challenges of poor provisions for pedestrians and cyclists crossing the Lake Road. It enhances traffic management priorities, provides safer routes for everyone, reduces bus journey times, and alleviates congestion during peak hours along this vital corridor. Moreover, this proposal supports future developments in the city center area. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's go through to people who are wanting to speak. Ian, do you want to go first?
Thank you. Portsmouth Cycle Forum welcomes and supports this project being brought forward some 6 years after we had our first site meeting with PCC officers at the Holbrook Road roundabout to analyse the issues and discuss improvements to the connectivity and safety for everyone who chooses to cycle in our city. Whilst the roundabout part of this scheme's delivery is not covered under the TRO under discussion here, the changes involved do go some way to creating space for cycling at a location well known for its cycle collisions and injuries. We have previously highlighted our issues with the proposed design, mainly concerning the directness of the scheme and the potential for increased cycle and pedestrian conflict, but we acknowledge that the improvements have been made which should benefit those who are less confident about cycling on the road surrounded by motor vehicles. The removal of the pay and display parking spaces along Lake Road to create a westbound protected cycle lane and additional bus lane is the next logical step to assist the connection of the residential centre of Portsea Island to the city centre. The route also appears on the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan 21 to 31 as part of cycle route 301 section 13. As was demonstrated when the parking spaces were removed in favour of a cycle lane alongside the railway sidings in Goldsmith Avenue around 2016, the traffic flow actually improved as the running lanes were effectively widened, easing two-way directional travel, absolutely critical for the strategic road network and bus routes, and therefore contributing to the existing bus improvement plan as adopted by the Council. The changes as highlighted in the TRO also match the vision of the City Council's Local Transport Plan 4 to create a people-centred transport system and travels through a ward where, according to the 2021 census data included in the report, 57% of the population do not have access to a car or van, and 40% of people travel to work using sustainable travel. The road is also located inside the clean air zone, and so the increased provision for people who live outside of the area to change to a cleaner mode of travel for their journeys to or through the city centre. The additional loss of 2 parking spaces that are located on the circulatory path of the Cornmill roundabout are necessary to protect the safety of cyclists travelling into the city centre when exiting the proposed new cycle track. They are also currently located next to curbside barriers, further restricting the ease of their use for the elderly, those with mobility issues, and the loading or unloading for the Haven and Salvation Army buildings. In our response to the public consultation, we stated that we would have preferred the remaining parking spaces between the roundabout and Spicer Street be removed. But given the responses in the report being considered today, Perhaps these remaining spaces should all be converted to disabled or loading spaces given the proximity of the identified 2,000 parking spaces which can be used for those working, visiting or wishing to shop in Commercial Road. The responses to the report also highlight issues The responses to the report also highlight issues that the future redevelopment of the city centre north should be aware of when planning of the area around this location is undertaken, maybe with a dedicated blue badge car park close to the shopping area. The plans for this scheme have been around for a couple of years before going to public consultation earlier this summer. There must have been a negotiation about the redesignation of land from green space to highway, and so we are surprised that the tree wardens had not been contacted about the potential removal of 6 trees. We would therefore be happy to discuss any potential rerouting of the cycle track if that was required. We have previously raised concerns about the proposed layout of the access to the eastbound cycle lane with the project team. However, this should not restrict the decision to remove the parking. The scope of the Transforming Cities Fund has already been reduced considerably since the money was awarded due to the cost increases that have hit the country and the construction sector. This in turn has also delayed the various projects that were supposed to This in return has also delayed the various projects that were supposed to have already been started as part of the funding award. It is also worth noting that a decision not to approve this scheme or to delay it further could also be used to mark down the City Council's local authority active travel rating with Active Travel England. The initial ratings were released in March 23, with Portsmouth ranked in the second lowest level, which meant that they were assessed as having some local leadership with basic plans and isolated interventions that do not yet obviously form a plan for a network. Active Travel England's website states that these ratings are used to guide the initial allocation of active travel and capability funding. Higher rated authorities are eligible to access more funding, however effectiveness, quality and deliverability will be the primary factors in deciding final allocations. Portsmouth Cycle Forum's concern is that the additional delay to delivering the CERT schemes combined with other associated delivery issues from previous project funding rounds places PCC at a higher risk of being downgraded or restricted to which future Department of Transport funding rounds are accessed, and subsequently how much can be applied for. In the times of austerity funding where these funding rounds are being relied on to afford the planned schemes, this will place the Council Transport Strategy and its own climate emergency and net zero plans into a position where they cannot be delivered in the next decade. This scheme improves the options for sustainable travel in the city centre and builds upon other CERT schemes in the pipeline, while also opening up the possibilities to connect it to a wider network as part of the ongoing City Centre North development, which can in turn create safe, direct, consistent travel options for another east-west route in line with previously adopted strategies and implementation plans. Therefore, we support the recommendation to approve this scheme and the implementation of the scheme and associated TRO. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. John.
Thank you. The Portsmouth and Southsea, my name is John Worley. The Portsmouth and Southsea Tree Warden Volunteers are sponsored by the National Tree Council and supported by Portsmouth City Council. Our business is with encouraging support of local schools and other associations is to plant and care for trees and to make the city greener. Last winter season, for instance, we planted over 2,500 trees in Portsmouth. We're very proud of our city and its ambition to double the city's canopy coverage as part of its aim to become a net zero city by 2030. We are delighted that Portsmouth has been granted the Tree City of the World Award for a second time. I've been asked to speak up for the 6 fine mature trees that look to be destroyed, perhaps needlessly, in this Lake Road bus lane and road widening scheme. We welcome the forecast improvements to public transport that this project promises and the reduced travel time for motorists coupled with improved safety for cyclists. We're aware that current proposals will involve the planting of several dozen new trees. We do not, the tree wardens, claim that every tree is sacred or that trees are more important than people, but we do believe that every mature and healthy tree is worth saving, if it can be, without jeopardizing the project. We believe that in the interest of saving the trees, cyclists and pedestrians on the north side of Lake Road would be happy to forgo close proximity to the traffic and to meander between and around those trees to be saved. An excellent example, local example, of beneficial total segregation of cycle pedestrians from vehicular traffic is to be found in Landport Park, which runs beside Holbrook Road. We urge planners and decision makers to walk and cycle the length of Landport Park before walking the west side of the footway of Holbrook Road for comparison. The planner's traditional mindset, which appears to value trees only by their cost of removal, is increasingly out of step with a growing public awareness about the ecological value of mature urban trees, the heritage they represent to people, similar to old buildings, and their importance to civic pride, the urban scene, and the war against climate change. We do not need to remind the Cabinet that the public's new appreciation of trees, conflicting as it may with the old planning thinking, can bring political cost and tragic consequences, as demonstrated recently in places like Sheffield and Plymouth. We do not demand a halt to this project, but we do request planners to increase the value they assign to the city's established trees, which may seem inconvenient to their new traffic schemes, that they exercise more imagination in finding ways around our trees. I need to add that a lot has happened in the last week since the tree wardens became aware of this scheme, and I'm very grateful for those changes. My belief, I think our belief, is that on the north side of Lake Road, with advantage, the pedestrian path and the cycleway could be entirely separated from the traffic route, and there's plenty of room between the trees to effect a good cycle route as it is through Landport Park. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, John. Trish.
I'm Trish Belv, and I am the coordinator for the Portsmouth and Southsea Tree Wardens and the Charles Dickens Community Orchards. I wish to speak up for the trees as the Portsmouth and Southsea Tree Warden coordinator. Often these trees will live a lot longer than we do, and in some cases for hundreds of years. Some of these trees in this area are 50 to 60 years old and are exceptionally valuable. We are custodians of these mature trees. The trees promise to provide us with oxygen and clean air that we breathe. This is vital in our clean air zone. It's very important. Their value increases as the tree ages because it does more to help us. As a city, we must show we value our trees. They are our green capital assets. We are not against the bus lane, removal of parking spaces or the cycle lane. We understand the need for these. Please include our healthy mature trees and work around them and include them. Make them centerpieces. Increase the diversity and cultivate the rare trees of the city, please. Experiment with new types of trees, new ways of planting them. Please think of the future of our city. We need these trees. We understand that it may be possible to reroute the cycle lane. We ask you to seriously consider this and save the trees that you can.
Thank you. Martin, I understand you have one to read out.
Thank you. Yes, I'm just going to read out the deputation from the South Hampshire Bus Operators Association. So this is a letter signed by Simon Goff, the Managing Director for First South, and Mark Reddy, Managing Director for Stagecoach South. And it starts, as principal bus operators in the city of Portsmouth, we wish to make a written deputation in relation to the above matter going before the Cabinet member for the Transport decision meeting on 10th of August. I realised that was delayed and we're here today on the 18th. We wholeheartedly support the recommendation in the report which approves the Lake Road scheme and the implementation of TRO 39/2023 for the introduction of waiting restrictions and bus lane on Lake Road, Portsmouth as advertised. We have worked closely on this project with the City Council on the development of the SEHRT programme since its inception, bidding, funding and design stages, and are convinced that the proposals, which include a new bus lane between Lake Road and Cornmill roundabouts, will lead to journey time savings and journey time reliability improvements on First Services 3 and 7, as well as Stagecoach Service 23, travelling towards the city centre. The proposed journey time savings of up to 3 minutes are not only an important reason why DFT funded this scheme, but also a vital element of the wider bus service improvement plan, which has journey time reliability and reduced bus journey times as two essential elements to improve bus services in the city. In a recent resident survey, over a third of city residents use buses more than once or twice per week, and the need to improve bus services, including journey times, is a top priority of residents as well as bus operators and the City Council. We look forward to this scheme being delivered and continuing our strong partnership to increase passengers, improve reliability and decrease bus journey times in the city.
Thank you very much, Martin. There's been a lot of work done on this scheme over several years, but over the last few weeks there's been quite a lot to try to make sure that we have a scheme that meets different needs. So I'm pleased that it looks as if we've been able to make some improvements, and this scheme to me seems as if we're going to be able to help improve bus times. I did have a discussion with the bus operators to see, because there's only a bus lane in one direction, and clearly it would be better if we could have bus lane in both directions. And I had a discussion with them about whether what they thought of sharing the bus lane with cyclists, and their view was they would prefer to have a bus lane in one direction with no cyclists, as opposed to bus lanes in both directions with cyclists. So that's fine, sensible to listen to what their view is. This produces a safer cycling route into the city centre, which is again part of the city's plans, and safer pedestrian crossings at two places where people cross at the moment, but where there are no pedestrian crossings, one near Commercial Road and one at the southern end of Church Road, I think, Church Street, my apology. I was concerned about the loss of parking, but this is pay and display car parking, so this is not residential for people living in the area, and there is an awful lot of empty car parking around Commercial Road, so that seems safe. But we've been to talk to the Salvation Army, and their need for people being able to drop off their kids for nursery, but also people attending events, services, recitals, etc. And I think we've been able to be flexible with them. And also we need to look at protecting the trees where possible. So I'm going to suggest 3 additional recommendations following discussions with people. The first is that there's and this is a request of Councillor Cal Corkery, a 2-metre fence is offered to the residents of Norsk House to aid privacy in their gardens as on the opposite side of the road. Secondly, that the western 3 trees, T1, T2 and T3, that are threatened with removal are saved, and an examination is made about whether reducing the width of the bus lane and the vehicle carriageway by around a foot to keep them further away from the roots of the trees is possible to help protect those trees. And thirdly, that in future tree wardens are treated as a statutory consultee in all construction projects where trees are at risk, and their comments noted in all reports. So my feeling is we should proceed with those caveats, but colleagues, Graham, do you want to go first?
Do we have a copy of the new recommendations?
No, because I've written them.
I know, but we would like a copy so we can read them, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, in which case, can I suggest then we have a quarter of an hour adjournment so we can go and get that typed up, and so people can see that if you want them on paper. Simon?
Can I just ask a question before
of course, we
do that? I sort of don't disagree with what you're saying for the fence and
Yeah.
for the statutory consultee. My concern is the middle one,
Yeah.
in so much that bus lanes are probably a legal width, and Martin's nodding at me, and to look to say, oh, let's investigate to see whether we can reduce that, is going to move into the legalities of whether we are going to have a legal bus lane or not if we reduce the width of it. And I would suggest by doing that, you are going to delay the project because you're going to be asked to do some investigation work and come back, because you're in essence changing the nature of a TRO.
No, we're not changing the TRO. So I've checked that bit, so it doesn't change the TRO, Simon. Martin.
Thank you, Gerald. Can I just add that we've heard this morning from both the Cycle Forum and from the tree wardens, both of which have mentioned around about the flexibility around the cycle lane piece as well. And I think that is an area where we can have movement. I would not want to say we're going to reduce. We've got a minimum bus lane there already of 3 metres. I don't want to say we're going to take off X millimetres, but there's other flexibility, so maybe we could have that conversation.
And that's why I've particularly put in the words, I haven't said this is what we will actually do, I've asked for an examination of it to give us some flexibility. The difference, as I understand it, is that the foundations to a cycle lane and to a footpath are much less deep than to a carriageway or a bus lane, because they have to carry less weight. And therefore, it's important if we can, and when we looked at the trees yesterday and looked at the where the carriageway is going to go, if we can keep it a little bit further away from the trees, then more roots are protected and the trees have a better chance. Martin, do come.
Thank you. Yeah, and giving more chance to the trees by moving effectively what is the carriageway, i.e. the curb line, away from the tree, which creates that further protection zone, is something which certainly we can do, and I think we can do that without affecting the TRO or the decision today. All I'm saying is we can't say we're going to reduce the bus lane because we're at a minimum, or even the actual lane, the car lanes.
So that's why I've put in that I'm asked for an examination of it, not a firm "this thou shalt do it." Okay, so if we're going to go and get this typed up, of course, yeah.
I think it's the principle I'm really concerned about here, is that new recommendations are moved verbally. We have no chance to see that.
Yeah.
It seemed to me it would be quite possible for something to have been drafted, even by hand, to be circulated so we could see what it is. I think it's a wrong in principle that new recommendations are moved verbally and we have no chance to really quite understand the implications. So I hope in future, and I don't want to delay our meeting any longer because I think I understand what's being proposed, but I think as a principle, if new recommendations are moved, can we please ensure in future that they are provided in writing to the members, even at the beginning of the meeting, so we can have a look at them?
Yeah, fine. Sorry, my experience in this council is at Cabinet where that wouldn't happen, but if you do things differently here, I'm very happy to follow your tradition on this committee.
I think it's a principle that's reasonable to follow if you're going to do that. So,
yeah. But I'm very happy if this is the tradition here. Then I'm very happy to do that in the future. But do you want to have an adjournment now to get it typed up so you can look at it?
Not necessarily. I have heard what you've said, but I think there is a principle.
Yeah, no, that's fine. If that's
I've made my point. So
absolutely.
I won't ask for a 15-minute adjournment. So.
All right. Simon, do you want to come in?
Sort of a comment and a question at the same time. I mean, I think Martin and the team have got the thrust of where you're coming with that middle amendment, additional recommendation. I don't know whether it really needs to be put in there, but it's entirely up to you as the Cabinet member, because I think they've got the message to go away and have a look to see what they can actually do. I do have a question, just for clarity, because I wasn't quite certain in the presentation and in the report, because there was a comment around a potential new TRO for blue badge parking on Lake Road. The presentation suggested that it was something that could be considered, and 4.4 says that our request has been submitted. Is that actually the case, that that TRO is in place, or it's going to be coming back to the Cabinet as a separate thing to do that?
Just for clarification, that TRO is going to be progressed from this point, and it will go to Cabinet for a decision when it's ready for presentation. So we do have to follow the process of formal consultation and the decision making.
That's fine. I mean, I appreciate we can't add it in because it's a separate process, but I would like to think that that TRO could be up and running in parallel with this scheme, so that it all goes in at the same time, rather than we suddenly decide to bolt them in after we've done all this particular work. So, but you've clarified that in that respect. Other than that, my general comment is the fact that this has obviously been kicking around for a very long time. I raised when we had a briefing about it, about the desire lines for the crossing, and you assured me that that was going to be the case. But my view is that, I don't think I've ever said this before, I'm on the same page as the Cycle Forum on this particular instance, and the fact that I think we need to get on and do it.
Okay, Graham?
Yeah, I think I'm happy with the general principle of the scheme and the proposal, but I'm a bit concerned about how we got where we are with the situation where we had a meeting that was had it scheduled. The meeting, the item was then withdrawn, and then we've had to have another meeting. Now, I wasn't able to attend the briefing meeting because of a prior commitment to a university, and the date actually was changed, so it clashed with something that I'd already agreed to do. And it seems to me that one of the things I would normally ask with schemes like this is have the ward councillors been consulted, and it's not clear how much or how far they were. I understand that Housing may well have talked about some of the proposals because it affected housing land, but we do need to get a bit more joined up in the way we do consultations, given our importance of the tree. I dug out the tree charter, which was on the council's website, and it makes it quite clear, that we should be consulting about these things. And I'm surprised it wasn't picked up a bit earlier, particularly when the briefing meeting, which I wasn't able to attend. But I hope that this has been useful in terms of learning, that we need to make sure that all parties that are involved get a chance to have their say on this, and particularly the ward councillors, who will have a real knowledge of the local area and may pick up on issues which we haven't otherwise done so. So I'm sorry we ended up having to have it delayed, but broadly support the scheme and hope it will be able to go ahead.
My understanding is the ward councillors have been consulted, and Councillor Calcorkery was able to attend the site meeting yesterday and walk the site, so that's been helpful. So we've delayed the decision by 8 days, but within that, the outcome of that is that we have been able to save half the mature trees that were going to be cut down, have been saved by this, including what Simon Pearce has described as by far the best example, and a really good example of a lime tree in the city. So I think there is a balance to be drawn between sticking to a timetable or delaying by a week to save half the mature trees that were threatened. And I think that's been a positive and useful intervention. I think we then come to a decision, and people have heard the amendments that I have suggested. And Martin, are you all right with that?
Remind me what that last amendment was.
That the tree wardens will be treated as statutory consultees in all construction projects where trees are at risk, and their comments noted in all reports.
Yes. What was the second one?
The second one is that the western 3 trees, T1, 2 and 3, threatened with removal are saved, and an examination is made of the bus lane and vehicle carriageway to see if they can be reduced to help protect the trees.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Of course, Simon.
on the last one about the tree wardens being a statutory consultee, and I agree with it, and I'm going to be a pedant around standing orders and the Constitution now. What you've decided to do in transportation would apply to transportation projects.
Yes.
But it won't apply to any other projects involved in planning matters or anything like that. So you've given them a small pigeonhole, and I would suggest that this forum is not the place to do that, but full cabinet is, so that you can do it and they become an all-encompassing statutory consultee on anything to do with city council matters. Because arguably, you're looking at it from a road point of view here, but when we redevelop the city centre, albeit there aren't a great number of trees there, and an awful lot of trees may or may not get removed, or other projects as such, they would not be a statutory consultee under those guidelines. This is the wrong forum to do this, I would suggest, but I don't disagree with what you're trying to do.
So what I'm trying to do is to take the first step, and that I hope that the Cabinet will follow. I will talk to my colleagues on the Cabinet and hope that they follow, but I don't have the power to make that happen anymore. No, okay, and maybe I'd recommend to Cabinet that they examine this for other areas of the City Council's work. That sounds sensible. Felicity, you're waving.
Thank you. Can I just clarify the second recommendation that you're putting forward is that you are not expecting a paper to come back to this meeting?
Yes.
We can proceed with the scheme and investigate outside of this. And can I also ask just to clarify the first recommendation as well, please?
That a 2-metre fence be offered to the residents of North House to aid privacy in their gardens as on the opposite side of the road. Yeah, so that was only raised as an issue yesterday. So it's trying to make sure that we listen to the views of local councillors and attempt to reflect that. Okay, with those additional recommendations, I'm happy to say yes. At which point, thank you very much indeed, everybody, for coming, and thank you for everybody involved in the project. And work will start sometime in the fall, I understand. Okay, great. Thank you.